Can you handle one more Easter encounter? They just keep getting better, and I want you to get your money's worth. This one from John's Gospel takes place between the first two, right after Matthew's story of the Marys. Early in the morning, on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and then ran at once to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. Breathlessly panting, "They took the Master from the tomb. We don't know where they've put him." Peter and the other disciple left immediately for the tomb. They ran neck and neck. The other disciple got to the tomb first, outrunning Peter. Stooping to look in, he saw the other pieces of linen cloth lying there, but he didn't go in. Simon Peter arrived after him, entered the tomb, observed the linen cloths lying there, and the kerchief used to cover his head not lying with the linen cloths, but separate, neatly folded by itself. Then the other disciple, the one who had gotten there first, went into the tomb, took one look at the evidence, and believed. No one yet knew from the scriptures that he had to rise from the dead. With all its miraculous parts, the gospel is quite down to earth. Birth in an animal feeding trough, a Savior who goes to sleep during a storm in a boat, who bleeds, who gets thirsty on the cross, who prays wondering why God has forgotten him. And then a resurrection where women's words trembling are questioned, and where two of the disciples race to the scene, and John can't help but mention that he won the race. And then two of those who are so close to Jesus for 3 years are confronted with an empty, silent place of death. The linens that were around Jesus and the face covering are the only material witnesses. Can't we have more proof than that? The question came back. At this crisis moment in your life, when this is all you've got, can you believe me? And John thinks like a private eye on the last 5 minutes of a cop show. If grave robbers were here, why take off the linen? So much quicker and easier to drag the body away with. And if someone stole the body, why in the world fold up the headcloth? That makes no sense. That makes even less sense than if Jesus did what he had said that he would, but that we just couldn't take in before now. John saw and believed. All these characters in these Easter stories, brief as they are, soon got much better reasons to believe. They got to see Jesus in person, some later in the morning, others that night, and later 500 believers would see him sometime in those 40 days while he remained on the earth, 1 Corinthians reports. But first, they were asked to deal with much less proof than they would have liked, even as people in months and years to come would be faced without a visible Jesus, but with very strong evidence. An empty tomb. The disciples' united testimony in full agreement, and a story which never changed all their lives under the threat of death. They were willing to die for it, and most of them did. The explosion of the church, what an evidence, because it was based completely on the claim of a living Savior and the love and power that came through him and his people. In the values, a slowly changing world over the centuries, according to the values that Jesus demonstrated. In healthcare, especially for the poor and most needy and seemingly least profitable. In equal values gradually seen, value for women, for children, in all nationalities and races, and in a war-torn world, still many examples of reconciliation and peace. These we looked at this morning struggled with that eternal pull of faith and questions. It can be healthy. It can refine and sharpen and deepen our faith. Why do I believe? I've asked myself many times over the years. I believe because the Bible accounts, especially the Gospels, and of the stories we've looked at this morning, are so strongly corroborated and reinforced. Because what the gospel says about man and woman and the world just makes so much sense to me. It agrees with what is, explains it, and because the Bible speaks to my own personal needs for love and forgiveness, for meaning and purpose, because of the changed lives I've seen around me and the changes I trust others have seen in myself. And the quiet but credible realities for me of guidance, of answered prayer, of strength and hope for each day and sufficient for each challenge. What about you? That's what this morning is about. Well, let's fast forward to one more very short scene later in that same chapter of John. 8 days later, his disciples were again in the room. This time, Thomas was with them. It was a week after that first Easter Sunday night. Jesus came through the locked doors, stood among them, and said, "Peace to you." Then he focused his attention on Thomas. "Take your finger and examine my hands. Take your hand and stick it in my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said, "My Master, my God." Jesus said, "So you believe because you've seen with your own eyes. Even better blessings are in store for those who believe without seeing."